Good morning and welcome to World News here on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. The governor of Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia region says that Russian attacks on Friday night killed 12 people and wounded more than 40 others. Video footage shows cars and a building engulfed in flames. Regional officials said that a direct hit on a vehicle workshop in the city of Zaporizhzhia turned the repair shop into a giant fireball and killed 10 people. The strikes came at around 5 p.m. local time. In President Vladimir Zelensky's hometown, Kryvyi Rih, 2 people were killed when a missile hit an administrative building. Emergency services said at least 19 people were injured in that attack. The presidents of Poland and the Baltic States issued a joint statement on Friday condemning the use of force against Georgian protesters and appealing to Georgian authorities to immediately cease their violent actions. The number of law enforcement interventions shows an attempt to intimidate the opposition. Here's Don Arleth with the latest on protests in Georgia.
Another night here in Tbilisi, and of course thousands, tens of thousands of protesters on the streets protesting against the current government, which has cut off their road towards the European Union. Now, hundreds of people have been detained in these protests. The opposition says many of them illegally, and what they're demanding is the immediate release of all the unlawfully detained people, even including opposition members. Now they also want to hold new elections, free and fair elections. This comes on the heels of the October 26 elections, which gave Georgian around 54% of the vote. There were instances of ballot box stuffing and even vote buying, and these irregularities are exactly what the protesters are out here on the streets to protest. They want a new independent election administration because they say the current one is tainted, and they're going to come out here on the streets of Tbilisi until that happens. Reporting from Tbilisi, Don Arleth, TVP World.
Presidential elections in Romania have officially been annulled. On Friday, the country's constitutional court ruled that the first round of voting is invalid due to the threat of Russian interference in the process. Our correspondent, Pavel Chaskovsky, is in Bucharest and has more.
The presidential electoral process will have to start from scratch following the Friday's decision of the Constitutional Court to nullify the presidential elections altogether. Also on Friday, the current president of Romania, Klaus Iohannis, said that he will remain in office until the new president is elected. Iohannis was about to conclude his second presidential term just before Christmas. But it seems that he will be the one to convene the new government, the new parliament, which was elected just last Sunday, and then nominate the new prime minister, who will then form a new government. And this new government will then decide on the future shape and date of presidential elections. I spoke to some people on the streets of Bucharest on Friday about their feelings when it comes to the current situation, current political situation in Romania.
I don't think it's the best decision right now of the situation that we have. I think that we need to speak our minds and we need to choose. So
and
it's
if you had a choice, who would you choose?
Pro-European, of course. I don't know what to expect, actually. Everything is so unexpected nowadays that we don't even know what to think right now as of today.
Honestly, it was just too much publicity around the case, so I just assumed that there was too much public pressure on the authorities to actually cancel the elections.
The Friday's ruling of the Constitutional Court puts the country into political turmoil, but it is based on reports by secret services that one of the candidates in the presidential runoff, Călin Georgescu, was to benefit in his political campaign from Russian influence. From Bucharest, Romania, for TVP World, I'm Pavel Trzaskowski.
Concerns of Russian influence on European elections are at an all-time high as the candidate most likely to win the second round of Romanian presidential elections, was outed as an alleged Russian asset, leading to the country's top court annulling the vote. In the latest episode of TVP World's On the Record with Adam Yasser, Jacques Rupnik, a research director at Sciences Po Paris University, spoke of the possible consequences of annulling the election results.
My first reaction when I heard this news, was, my God, this comes very late. You know, this comes two weeks after the election and just on the eve of the second round. So it immediately, even on the part of those who are not particularly pleased with Calin Georgescu's showing in the first round, this was pretty surprising and cast some doubts. And then the second reaction is, well, they better have some ironclad evidence for annulling a first round of an election. The fact that on the website you have interference, you have manipulation, so-called hybrid influence, all this goes on. Yes, in our democracies, it goes around the world. It was true in all sorts of elections. I remember when Hillary Clinton election in 2016.
And it's also a question of overall, probably, it's also a question of the overall reputation and credibility of a system. And in Romania, perhaps its reputation isn't always great. So that can just reinforce this feeling, right?
Indeed, it will raise the suspicion that the Constitutional Court is being used by the security services, because the news about this new evidence that they have came apparently from intelligence services. So
right.
It will undoubtedly, raise suspicion and, conspiracy theories, etc., which is precisely on what the populist movements challenging liberal democracy thrive.
And you can watch the rest of this week's On the Record episode on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@TVPWorld and on our social media portal. In France, around 6,000 police officers are being deployed to provide extra security ahead of this evening's official reopening ceremony of Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. The Gothic landmark is being reopened following 5 years of rebuilding works after its roof and a famous spire were damaged by fire in April 2019. Dozens of international leaders and heads of state, including US President-elect Donald Trump and Poland's President Andrzej Duda, have accepted invitations from President Emmanuel Macron. This evening, the Archbishop of Paris, Laurent Ulrich, will lead around 1,500 guests through a reopening service. This will be followed by an inaugural Mass on Sunday, when the building's main altar will be consecrated. Russian and Belarusian troops will conduct joint drills near the Polish border, as outlined in a new defense pact signed by Russian President Vladimir Putin and Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko. The agreement also sees Moscow extending its nuclear umbrella over Belarus, strengthening their military alliance.
A very warm welcome in Belarus is something Putin would be very unlikely to receive in 124 countries that are members of the International Criminal Court, a court which issued an arrest warrant for Putin in connection with his war crimes in Ukraine. But Belarus is not one of them and remains the Kremlin's staunch ally, every now and then strengthening their kinship ties under the joint name of the Union State.
With the signing today of the concept of security of the Union State and the Interstate Treaty on Security Guarantees, we are reaching an unprecedented level of strategic alliance and coordination of actions in the military sphere.
The agreement signed on the occasion of Putin's visit to Minsk allows, first and foremost, for a possible use of tactical nuclear weapons stored in Belarus. That would lower the threshold for a nuclear strike, stipulating that Moscow could resort to such measures in response to an attack with conventional weapons. Though this decision was already announced last month, it has now been signed into life by the two heads of state.
Among other things, we are talking about Russian tactical nuclear weapons located on the territory of the Belarusian Republic at the suggestion of the president of Belarus.
Following the signing, Putin reportedly told Lukashenko that Russia could deploy in Belarus its Oreshnik intermediate-range hypersonic missiles capable of carrying multiple nuclear warheads.
We have, and I am not joking, certain locations where we can deploy these weapons. Only one condition: the targets for these weapons will be designated by the Belarusian military and political leadership.
Though it might look like Belarus is the bigger beneficiary of the agreement, according to journalist Alexander Papko of the non-regime Belsat TV station, the deal does benefit Russia.
Russia is continuing nuclear blackmail of Western countries, and it uses Lukashenko regime for this.
Of similar opinion is Poland's foreign minister Radosław Sikorski, who doesn't believe the treaty was signed by equal partners.
Lukashenko's submission to Putin is nothing new.
But Poland and its allies might be concerned about the treaty, as it means intensified activity from Belarus, says Frana Gwiaciorka, advisor to exiled Belarusian opposition leader Svetlana Cichanouskaya.
It just means the continuation of the constant provocations that Poland, Lithuania, Latvia were facing in last years, continuous hybrid attacks with migrants, continuous provocations with military. Military drills are planned for next year, probably with nuclear drills as well.
Russia, which is the world's biggest nuclear power, regularly holds joint military exercises with Belarus. Next September, Belarus will host drills of the post-Soviet military bloc led by Russia, and that will take place in the close proximity to the border with Poland.
A new European Union sanctions package against Russia has not been approved. The reason is a disagreement over a provision that would allow EU companies to continue operating in Russia. Lithuania and Latvia have blocked the sanctions package, demanding the introduction of a ban on Western companies operating in Russia. The loophole, which has angered the Baltic States, was originally proposed as a way for companies to gradually limit their operations in Russia, with the aim of pulling out of the country altogether. Some other EU countries, including France and Germany, reportedly felt that it was too early to ban EU companies from operating in Russia. Discussions on the EU's 15th sanctions package are expected to resume on December the 16th. South Korea's president has apologized for imposing a 6-hour martial law, but has refused to resign. Speaking on the record with Adam Yasser, French political scientist Jacques Rupnik said the failure of his move shows the strength of South Korean democracy. According to Rupnik, South Korea's institutions kept the president in check, while the people took to the streets to express their discontent.
Democratic development is not linear. Korea didn't have a democratic tradition. Its democratic developments are fairly recent. Let's say it gradually developed, somewhat parallel to its economic boom. So it developed over the last maybe 3 decades or so. It was gradual. And now that we thought that democracy was really established, we see a president attempting a coup. So that's the main lesson. Democracy is never to be taken for granted. Setbacks can happen, but also the Korean case suggests that democracies are resilient. You can cope with it, you can respond to it, and they seem to be handling it very effectively, and they have popular support. People went immediately to the streets, but mainly the institutions have worked and kept the president in check.
And that brings us to the end of this news bulletin. Don't go away, lots more coming up.